Hello, I'm Richard Chambers, the Senior Advisor for Risk and Audit at Audit Board, and welcome to another in my continuing podcast series on speaking of risk and audit. I'm joined today by an old friend, Karem Obeid, who is the Head of Risk and Audit at the Higher Colleges of Technology in the UAE. Karim and I have worked together for a number of years. We worked together in leadership roles at the IIA, and I was really delighted when he agreed to join the series today. Welcome, Karim.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard, for having me.
Karim, I'd like for our listeners to learn a little more about you and the roles that you play and the other really interesting parts of your background. So maybe you could just take a moment and highlight some of that for us.
I'm a Chief Audit Executive. I've dedicated my career to transforming internal audit functions by kind of introducing a culture of innovation, excellence, and continuous learning. Mm-hmm. I've assumed various roles as head of internal audit in different industries. However, I think the common factor was revamping and changing the internal audit function from a kind of typical assurance complying function into a trusted advisor function that is really a pillar of governance in the organization. Through my career, I think, and through these various industries, I've learned a lot of experience, a lot of visibility on areas that relate to internal audit. I've been involved in the profession via the association, and as you said, we served together on the IA board. I think 2013 till 18, if I'm not mistaken. So in addition to this, I have a couple of I'm a board member in a couple of companies and a member of the board and risk committees. And this gave me a bit of a visibility on not only what I need to do from an audit point of view, but also from a governance kind of member point of view. And it kind of both ways information flows and gave me an insight on what is needed now from an effective value-adding internal audit department.
Well, Karim, you're well known. You're making a very big impression on the profession when it comes to helping people to understand how the dynamics of leadership, how important great leaders are to internal audit. The profession is facing more complexity than it probably ever has before. What do you see as the biggest shift in the role of internal audit leaders compared to the past, say pre-COVID or even a decade ago?
I think as many professions, as the internal audit is evolving at a very fast pace. What was required 10 years ago is not applicable with the age of AI, with the age of cyber threats, with the age of talent kind of issues. We are facing the dilemmas of how can I deliver more with less? How can I impact the organization and be a player, having a seat at the table, a really effective kind of seat at the table, rather than being seen as a kind of just a cost to the organization that adds no value. I think the qualities now is not only technical. Technical is really important because of the fast pace of technology and the fast pace of the way things are going. But the skills and the values that an internal audit leader should have is most important. I think one of them is the courage. Courage has been recently introduced to the internal audit standard as a word. I'm not sure if we've seen it in the previous versions of the standard. Yeah. So courage and being bold is very important. I think saying what you think, and doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean just being loud.
Yeah.
I think it's basing your decision on data-driven or taking data-driven decisions. Yeah. And not being shy from saying them if you need to the highest authority. Right. Not being shy on advising the audit committee, the CEOs, the senior management, on things that might be difficult for them even to accept.
Right.
And you know that if you say that, then it'll kind of reflect negatively on the relationship. But at one point of time, you need to take a stand.
But Karim, let me ask you a question. So many chief audit executives in this day and age are brought into the role from the business. They're not career internal auditors. What are we doing wrong? Why are we not positioning ourselves as career internal audit professionals to be the natural choice when it comes to picking the leaders of our own functions?
I think this might be to the disconnect in the way of thinking. Some of the auditors, I would say, and one of the presentations I preach about is that each one of us is the voice of internal audit, and
Right.
each one of us and the work of each one of us reflect on the internal audit perception.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's responsibility of each internal audit leader to groom his team and to make sure there is a succession plan where management and boards see those people as value-adding, open-minded, business-driven, business acumen successors.
Yeah.
Sometimes we live in our own world. You talk about things when you talk to the CEO or the board about the risks involved, as if you're coming from a different world.
Right.
So I think we need to align. We need to have the strategic thinking, the agility, and the boldness, what we're talking about. I think this combination with the talent, kind of preparing the talent in your team for succession, for all of these skills, I think naturally they will become the leaders and they will succeed in revamping organization.
Yeah. When we look at what audit committees and C-suite executives tell us, a lot of times they make the comment that they just wish internal audit understood the business more. So it's back to this issue you mentioned of business acumen. Do you think that's something that we've got to put greater effort into, both as individuals and in the roles to coach and mentor those who we want to be in leadership roles, that somehow we have to help them to understand that business acumen, knowledge of the business is going to be vital to their getting the job and staying in the job?
I couldn't agree more. Definitely. I think not only business acumen, but business acumen is one of the Leary most important pillars. And when I talk about business acumen, it doesn't mean everybody in the team has to be an expert. Mm-hmm. I see the team as a team, so I see collective skills and abilities in the team. And you need some people who are very kind of skilled in the business. You need some people who's very skilled maybe in IT and cyber, and you don't expect them to be skilled in that business. So yeah. When I talk, I think about teams, I think collectively about my team competency. Yeah. And I encourage each leader do that, because you can't have it all in one person. You need to have all the skills needed, some level at least for everyone, but you don't expect everybody to be an expert,
right?
In all areas. So I think business acumen is important to have as part of the team. Open discussions, value-adding discussions across the team, each within his expertise.
Right. And
this is what makes a department flourish and what's make people kind of enhance, collaborate, and move upward.
You know, Karim, you and I both, I think, have been strong advocates for the importance of building and sustaining relationships, this so-called relationship acumen on the part of the CAE. Some people say internal audit lives or dies on the basis of how strong the relationships are that it builds. But, you know, I hear other people say, yeah, but that's a short path to compromising objectivity. If you somehow, if you get too close to management, if you're seen as trying to be likable, that you suddenly lose your objectivity. What's your assessment of that, and how do we avoid that potential pitfall?
I believe that this is the most important skill these days. And when I say skill, then you need to know when to kind of elaborate on that relationship or shy down. It depends. You need to have the courage to say what is needed to be said, or to be said, and not aim for being likable or not. I think it's all about respect.
Yeah.
If senior management, your stakeholders respect your work, respect your personality, respect your team,
And they trust you.
and trust, and it's all about trust on the other hand. And they trust you by two things. One, because they've seen you deliver good quality, they've seen you passionate and committed with a good judgment and unbiased and objective. And I think with these three, even if you say something that they don't like, they will respect and do.
Yeah.
So it all boils down, not, I don't want to be likable. I want to be value adding. I want people to listen me because not I'm telling them because of my position, because they respect, they value the way I recommend matters, and they see the impact or the positive impact of our work, the team's work on the organization. And this is more powerful than being, the most likable person.
Right.
Now, if both coincide, it doesn't matter. But I think objectivity, independence is a self-regulation. Whatever you put rules and regulations, if people want to break that, it
Right.
can be broken. So it's more or less self-regulatory issue.
I've sort of written about it, and I think you've certainly alluded to it as well in some of the things that I've heard you speak about in the past, and that is we have to coexist in the culture of the organization that we serve. And some cultures don't like oversight. They discourage oversight because they don't necessarily foster accountability. They want to be able to measure people on what gets done and now how it gets done. So what do you say to a chief audit executive who finds himself or herself working in a culture where maybe there is a lot of resentment toward internal audit because maybe it's a culture where they don't value transparency? What do you advise somebody in a situation like that? How do you advise them to either change that culture, or what should they do?
I think this is where a little bit sometimes the courage skill come into fact, because and I don't want to judge. Some situations are really harsh. I've been through situations where it's really difficult to make an impact because even the tone at the top was not true. And situations, a bit of story where I had an issue with discovering fraud, and then and that was a LinkedIn post I did, and the CEO brought the fraudster, and they said, sorry to hear that, and then you have to pay it in installment, and they kept him as a cashier. So that culture,
They didn't
that
even make
tone,
you pay it all back at once.
and exactly, and then they sue him.
Put them on a payment plan.
And I left the company.
Yeah.
And maybe luckily I was at that time single with not much responsibility.
Right,
But now I'm not saying because when you grow up the ladder, then you've got more responsibilities, you've got more family responsibility, and it's very tough. I'm not saying it's easy. But you have to take it, one, with relationship building, second, with education and awareness, starting from the board to the audit committee to the senior management. So we are, in addition to our roles as internal auditors, we're coaches, mentors of governance and risk and all. And sometimes we assume people know about stuff, but they need to be educated and they need to be trusted. When they see you working to protect them, they will a little bit open up. The question is, if you do all this and you still find yourself in a very negative, bad environment, you have two choices. One, you need to reassess your relationship with that company, because you will face the question, if something wrong happens, where were the internal audit? And I think if you cannot change, you did everything, it's just there's zero hope of revival of that culture. I think you need to reassess. It's a difficult situation. Maybe you need to sometimes talk to different authorities if you're in a regulatory body.
Yeah.
But you need to exert all the efforts to change the mindset, change the awareness level, make an impact. And I think step by step, small battles are won, then the whole kind of situation would change.
We've been talking for a few minutes now just about the the sort of the inner courage that a chief audit executive has to maintain, the skills to be able to build and sustain relationships, the knowledge of the business, that sort of business acumen, and for some listeners, that's gonna force them to kind of get beyond their comfort zone, right? Maybe they've spent their career in internal audit functions that are very predictable, and they have a very comfortable environment that they operate in. And so they're going to have to get out of their comfort zones to do some of the things that we're talking about. And what role do you think continuous learning and innovation, and even personal growth play in the internal audit leader being able to transform themselves?
I think I was thinking about that the other day, and I think because of our profession, we are very risk averse people. Because we deal a lot with, you need to have controls, you need to mitigate. I don't like mitigating risk. I like optimizing risk. We talk about mitigating risk. It affects our real life decisions, and we become very risk averse. We shy away from getting out of our comfort zone. For me personally, I do a small technique, which every now and then I do something out, like something I'm afraid of. Big zipline, this is my way of recalibrating the way I think. And I reflect that on the way I do things.
Mm-hmm.
I think life is a journey of excellence. If you do the same thing every day and you don't change it and have it more efficient or look at the efficiency, you will kind of go backwards.
Yeah.
So you need to always innovate. You need to always rethink what you do. You need to. I introduced 1 year ago, I think, my TikTok account, and I'm trying to talk to the new generation via their way. It's IA_Maverick, and that was at that time coming out of my comfort zone. I'm doing something new to promote audit, to promote internal audit to the new generation, because we have a shortage in the flow of. Now, having said that, I think the worst enemy of audit is complacency.
Yeah.
The worst enemy, because in the word of learn, unlearn, relearn every day, this is a kind of statement that we should never forget.
Right.
Because the data is changing, the way we do things is changing, the tools available from a technology point of view is changing.
Right.
Sometimes we spend time on things that we can do in a minute. So I think we always need to seek how to improve ourselves, how to improve our departments, and of course our organizations. But I think also we need to look at the way we look at our brand, our personal brand.
Right.
And one of the questions I always ask myself, which brand I want to be? What affects my brand? How do I enhance my brand as head of audit and as Karem?
Right.
So what are the objectives? What's my vision? What's my mission? I think these questions are always on my mind. And this helped me a lot in moving place I work in, the department, even the organization, even myself into a really better place.
Yeah. You know, one of the questions that I've been asking the guests on the podcast is looking forward over, say, the next 5 years. What is it that worries you the most for the internal audit profession, and what is it that gives you the most optimism?
Let me start with the optimism first.
Mm-hmm.
I think what gives me optimism is the amount of people I see, the colleagues, the networks, when I go to conferences, and the passion around people trying to improve, people trying to cope with new concepts, with AI, trying to reshape the internal audit department to make a bigger impact, protect organization, and enhance the profession as a whole. Been to Africa, to US, to Asia. The whole world is, when you meet the people, it's the same kind of direction.
Yeah.
Now, what's really scary is that, as I said, one, complacency. The second is the changing environment. that we need to cope with. And third, maybe if we don't embrace technology, we will miss the train. I don't think any profession would be replaced by AI. I think we need to recalibrate our profession to use AI and the new technologies to help us do our job better.
Yeah.
It's like, when the IT kind of became larger and larger, people thought their jobs were, they're going to lose their jobs. Some people lost, but we gained a lot via IT jobs, right? So now it's the time to recalibrate our teams into what do I need them to be in 2 years, 3 years? Which skills do they have to have to not only survive, to still have an impact.
Yeah. Well, very insightful, Karim, especially in terms of what the future might look like. But before we go, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you received a very important recognition recently from the IA Global. Maybe you can fill our listeners in on it and tell them a little bit about what that's about.
Yeah, it was a very proud moment for me, frankly. It's won the Chief Audit Executive of the year, 2025. And that was really kind of the result of all the hard work of myself, my team, all the support of the company I work with, and the passion that I put for internal audit to move it forward, to educate new generations and to get involved in elevating and embracing change in the internal audit profession. So that's really interesting and a proud moment.
Well, congratulations. And, I would say to our listeners, as you've been listening to the advice that Karim has been offering us over the course of this podcast, it's important now to put that in perspective, or realizing that you're an award-winning Chief Audit Executive. So they ought to be, their ears ought to perk up when you offer advice.
Thank you.
And thank you again for joining us. And I thank our listeners for joining us for Audit Board. I'm Richard Chambers, the Senior Advisor of Risk and Audit.